Medellín, Colombia, the 1980s. This was not a place for the faint of heart. It was a city under siege, a battlefield where loyalty could be a direct pact with death. At the epicenter of this storm of violence, a man rose, short in stature and with a voice that sounded almost childlike. John Jairo Arias Tascón, born on October 21, 1961, in the troubled La Havana neighborhood, forged a reputation so lethal that his name still today, decades later, sends shivers down your spine. They knew him as Pinina, the hitman, the soldier, the man who became the most feared shadow of the Medellín cartel and Pablo Escobar's most loyal warrior. A man who, it is said, never questioned an order from his boss. But what the official story rarely tells is that before that meteoric rise, before becoming a key piece of that criminal empire, his destiny was about to end too soon. Pinina had committed the unforgivable mistake, stealing from the wrong man. That episode, which could have sealed his immediate death on the streets, transformed him. It was the turning point that launched him into a life of absolute power and blind devotion, a loyalty so intense that it would inevitably lead him to the ultimate sacrifice. How did one mistake lead him to become the right-hand man of the Black Legend? How does a hitman rise from the deepest poverty to the top of criminal power? Get ready to hear the story of unbreakable loyalty. Today on Amazing Stories, we're going to uncover the truth behind Pinina. He was the fourth of 7 siblings and grew up in a place where things were tough. This didn't just affect how things were then, but also what would happen later. On the streets, he learned that you didn't ask for respect, you took it. His closest friends called him Pinina, a nickname he got because of his high-pitched voice, which sounded like a TV actress, and because he made funny, childish faces. But that innocent nickname would soon be linked to fear. While other kids went to school, he was learning a different skill: how to scare people. In any fight, he was the first to pull out a knife, and his angry outbursts got him kicked out of school. Far from getting his life together, that was the start of a journey that, even as a teenager, turned him into a thief, a gang member, and a leader of local groups. Even though he looked small and was only about 5 feet tall, he had a fierce drive, a smart mind, and a readiness for violence that made him stand out. John Jairo's small size was a sharp contrast to how good he was at getting away from the police. At first glance, he seemed like just a small boy, but hidden behind his tiny body was a sharp mind and a calmness that was unusual for someone his age. His mother, who was very religious, watched with fear the path her son was choosing. Every night she prayed to the Virgin Mary for him, asking the same thing over and over, that the little Virgin would keep him safe. But those prayers wouldn't be enough to stop Pinina from going down the path he was making for himself. When his luck ran out, he ended up in prison for the first time. The experience was short, but it was enough to make his name even bigger in the eastern parts of Medellín, where everyone already knew him as one of the most feared leaders. But the big change in his life didn't come from something good he did, but from a mistake. He stole from the most dangerous man in Colombia, Pablo Escobar. You'd think that doing something so bold would surely get him killed. But what seemed like a sure death turned into his ticket to a world of endless power. That's where one of the strongest loyalties in the world of crime was born, because you can't understand Pinina's story just by looking at his crimes, but by how he changed from a small-time neighborhood criminal into the armed muscle, the most brutal of the Medellín cartel. While everyone was focused on Escobar, few noticed that in the shadows, a man with an almost childlike face was growing, ready to kill and die for his boss. In a world where people often betrayed each other, Pinina was different. His word was more important than life itself, and that same loyalty that made him a top criminal would eventually lead him to his grave. The The situation where this relationship grew was a Colombia in trouble. In the 1980s, the legal economy was falling apart while a secret business was growing super fast. Cocaine trafficking, Medellín became the main place for this business, and the poorest neighborhoods, left alone by the government, became the perfect spot to find young people ready to do anything to get out of poverty. The meeting between Pinina and Escobar wasn't by chance, but what had to happen when two strong forces were bound to meet. After that robbery, one of Escobar's trusted hitmen, nicknamed Flaco Calavera, was sent to find him. What seemed like the start of his death ended in a surprise. Escobar, instead of ordering his death, offered him a job. The boss saw something in that skinny young man, with a high-pitched voice and childlike ways that most people missed. He saw an amazing ability to follow orders, get things done, and most importantly, be completely loyal. Pinina joining Escobar's group was, at first, almost no big deal. His first jobs seemed small, like running errands or carrying bags, or secretly taking the boss's girlfriends around. But that young man with the high-pitched voice would soon show that he was useful for much more than just small tasks. Their relationship got even stronger shortly after, during a trip to the United States where Pinina went with Gustavo Gaviria and Escobar himself. In a museum out west, he was amazed to see how these men who ran a huge criminal business could walk around among tourists as if they were just regular people. This big difference between having so much power and looking so ordinary made their connection even stronger, going beyond just a boss and his helper. Meanwhile, back in Colombia, a big political discussion was happening about something very important: sending drug dealers to the United States. For Escobar, that was a threat worse than dying. The idea of ending up in an American prison made everyone in the cartel really worried. Far from being scared, Pinina took on new roles. He became known as the guy for tough tasks. His fame grew so much that even José Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, also known as El Mexicano, would ask him to sort out problems in his labs, especially when shipments disappeared or there were fights among the workers. The trust Pinina earned wasn't just because he was violent. He had qualities that were much harder to find in that world. He was calm, serious, and most importantly, he kept things quiet. He was a man who only spoke when he had to, and in a world where saying too much could get you killed, that was a really valuable trait. By 1984, the teenage gang member from La Vaina had become an essential piece of the criminal machinery that would challenge the Colombian state. And all that power had begun with a simple robbery, a mistake that, instead of costing him his life, opened the doors to an empire of unimaginable violence and wealth. Pinina's rise in the Medellín cartel did not follow a slow or progressive path. It was dizzying, almost instant. With each successful operation, Escobar entrusted him with more delicate missions, placing him at the center of decisions that would change the country's history. The ultimate test came in 1984, when the Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, intensified his fight against drug trafficking. Lara had publicly denounced Escobar's connections to illegal activities and was determined to dismantle the criminal network expanding from Medellín. For the capo, the minister had become an intolerable enemy, and the task of neutralizing him fell to Pinina. On the night of April 30, 1984, the car in which Lara Bonilla was traveling was intercepted in Bogotá. The shots ended his life immediately. Even though the shooters were members of the Quesitos gang, the mastermind behind the attack was Pinina, who had orchestrated every minute detail of the plan. Following the assassination, the police launched a frantic manhunt for a man operating under the alias of Franco Naranjo. This was one of the many fake names Pinina used to stay hidden. To make sure there were no clues, he killed Byron Velázquez's girlfriend. Byron was one of the hitmen who helped with the attack. This became his signature move. Not just doing what Escobar told him, but also getting rid of anything that could cause problems for his boss. He was meticulous, cold, and, above all, infallible. After Lara's assassination, Escobar temporarily fled to Panama, accompanied by his trusted men, including Pinina. The scene was different. Pinina's job wasn't just about getting rid of enemies anymore. Now he had to get inside the police and army, right to the very top. The group of spies he put together became so good that almost nothing the police or army did went unnoticed by him. If an operation was organized against the cartel, Pinina knew about it before it even happened. The Colombian government's response to Lara's crime was quick. The fight against the Medellín cartel got much stronger. Escobar knew he was in danger of being sent to the United States, so he started a secret group called the Extraditables. They had a very clear and powerful message, which was, "We'd rather be buried in Colombia than locked up in a US prison." From that moment on, violence skyrocketed, and Pinina was the architect of this new way of doing things. If a journalist dared to write something negative about the cartel, Escobar didn't think twice. He sent the warning, as Pinina affectionately called it. If a policeman followed them, the answer was always the same. When prosecutor Carlos Mauro Hoyos issued new arrest warrants against the bosses, Pinina already had the plan. First, try to bribe them, then use violence if they wouldn't take the money. This direct fight with the government made Pinina a millionaire. By the mid-1980s, authorities estimated his personal fortune exceeded 500 million Colombian pesos, an enormous sum for a man who, just a decade earlier, barely survived on the streets of La Habana. The poor kid from La Habana, who once survived amidst gangs and petty thefts, now moved in Medellín's most exclusive neighborhoods. Pinina not only enjoyed luxuries he couldn't even dream of as a kid, but he also bought big houses, apartments, and other properties in different towns in Antioquia. He showed off so much money, it seemed like he'd never run out. His power grew super fast. In an operation in Bogotá, he traveled with Rodolfo Prisco with the mission of eliminating a judge and other figures who threatened the cartel's security. For many of these targets, the mere possibility of facing the death machine that Pinina represented was enough. Some people took the money they were offered. Those who said no got personal threats. Scary messages were written by the poet, who sent daily invitations to their own funerals to the people they were targeting. The fear Pinina caused was so great that even the Medellín police department itself had many bad apples and was very corrupt. He knew the geography of the popular neighborhoods in minute detail and used this knowledge to find young people who wanted to become hitmen. He gave them money, motorcycles, and respect in the criminal world. And when his groups ran into trouble, he always found new people from the many teenagers who wanted to be like him. His job wasn't just about being a tough guy anymore. Pinina even went head-to-head with other famous hitmen like Popol, Topo, Don German, or Maradona, getting better at city fighting tricks with them. Escobar and Rodriguez Gacha said he was the perfect criminal, not just because he was good at organizing things, but also because he kept everything super secret. Gone were the days when hitmen killed for a dose of bazuco. Now, under Pinina's coordination, they operated as a military-like group with connections reaching far beyond Colombia. His reputation grew so much that he was soon known as the fifth most important man in the Medellín cartel, even more powerful than many older drug dealers. Along with trusted guys like El Chopo and El Negro Pavon, he was no longer just seen as a helper. He started to be treated like a real boss who could make his own choices. His friends respected him not just because they were scared, but also because they were loyal and good friends. This is because, even with all the violence in his life, Pinina had normal hobbies. He spent hours fixing motorcycles in workshops and listened to salsa music. He was also a huge fan of Atlético Nacional. His fanaticism was so great that he sometimes neglected his safety by going to football matches, accompanied by his armed men. When the police raided his homes, they found photos and signed jerseys of the players from that era. In January of 1988, the Cali cartel decided to strike, right at the heart of their enemy. A car laden with explosives was parked in front of the Monaco building, the residence of Pablo Escobar and his family. The perpetrators mistook Fernando Gaviria, Escobar's wife's brother, for the boss himself and detonated the charge. Escobar survived, but the attack left a lot of people hurt and, a clear message. The war had started. The response came quickly. Pinina managed to catch two of the people involved, known as the Indian and the Freckled One. After a lot of questioning, he got really important information. The car had been hidden in the Monte Cassino area, and the bombs were given by a Spanish guy and an Argentinian guy. They were connected to a big house in Cartago, which belonged to a man nicknamed Scratchy, who was close to Miguel Rodriguez Orejuela. Escobar's fury was immediate. He threatened Rasguño with death, who, fearing for his life, sought refuge under the protection of Hernando Restrepo, also known as HR. Only HR's intervention managed to momentarily contain Escobar's revenge, but the Monaco incident was not an isolated event, but rather the beginning of an open war between Medellín and Cali. So, in an attempt to get back at them, Escobar ordered a mission in the other city. Pinina and El Negro Pavon were in charge, leading a team of tough guys ready to take out the leaders of the Cali cartel. But when they got there, they found the whole area was swarming with police. Someone had already tipped them off about the ambush. After several failed attempts, the group returned to Medellín, empty-handed. The Cali cartel responded with a more subtle strategy. They strengthened their ties with parts of the police and military who were hunting Escobar. This alliance turned the war into an even more dangerous conflict. As things got worse, Pinina went through one of the hardest losses in his life of crime. His main helper, Fabian Tamayo, who everyone called Chirusa, was killed. Chirusa was known for being really tough. He ran gangs in Guayabal and told hitmen like La Cuica what to do, as well as El Pájaro and Anchufe. He also made sure Escobar was safe and had secret helpers inside the police force. The news of his death was a devastating blow. Chirusa's body was photographed by his killers, and those pictures quickly spread all over Medellín like a war prize. Pinina, really angry, started questioning the guys who were close to his right-hand man. Along with Giovanni Lopera, also known as La Modelo, he figured out that the Cali cartel had hired killers for revenge because they thought Chirusa had double-crossed them. Pinina's reaction was super fast. He sent a group of his most trusted guys to Bogotá. Branches Muñoz, known as Tyson, was trained alongside his brother Tilton by an Israeli mercenary in military tactics and explosives. His cousin Cuco Zabala was a true expert in manufacturing explosive devices, and there was also Giovanni Lopera himself, who was Cuco's nephew. With this very small circle, Pinina managed to perfect, a true war machine. His job wasn't just about taking out single people anymore. He was then told to start working on bigger group operations, using car bombs as the main way to scare people. The fight between Medellín and Cali had gotten much worse and more violent. The Colombian state responded to the Medellín cartel's challenge with a direct offensive. $1 million rewards were offered for the capture of Escobar, Pinina, and other members of the organization. However, Pinina demonstrated his ability to escape again and again. He had devised an ingenious system of repeater antennas that diverted telephone signals, preventing the police from tracing his communications. His calls, moreover, were coded. He referred to places and meetings with childhood memories, seemingly innocent phrases like, "Do you remember when we were kids and drank juice in that house? We'll meet there." They served as secret coordinates. In 1990, Pinina was not only Escobar's most feared enforcer, but also one of the country's most wanted criminals, a true primula rossa. His unwavering loyalty had led him to the pinnacle of criminal power, but that same devotion had turned him into the #1 target of law enforcement. The hunt to capture him had already begun, and the net was closing in. To understand Pinina, we need to look at a very special example of complete loyalty in the history of organized crime. He was a man who would give everything, his life, his sense of right and wrong, and his future, for someone else. From when he was a little kid, his personality was shaped by a really tough environment. Growing up in the extreme poverty of the Lavina neighborhood meant fighting a daily battle for recognition and survival. Pablo Escobar wasn't just a boss to Pinina, he was like a father figure. With his charm and strong leadership, he filled a big empty space in John Jairo's childhood, a time when he didn't have strong role models. That emptiness was replaced by a bond of devotion that was almost like a religion. While many of Escobar's other guys could be bought off or give in when things got tough, Pinina stayed strong and couldn't be corrupted. His loyalty had a practical origin. Escobar had spared his life when it would have made sense to get rid of him after the first theft. But what started as thankfulness turned into a deeper mental agreement. Experts in crime and psychology have talked about similar situations where followers' identities become one with their leaders. That was Pinina. There was no difference between his own life and the Medellín cartel's mission. Attacking Escobar was like attacking him. Escobar's successes were his, and so were the defeats. This close connection explains why he could do extremely violent things without seeming to feel bad about them. For Pinina, these weren't just his own choices. It was about protecting an idea he shared with his boss. Pinina had 3 rare qualities for a hitman: strategic intelligence, knowledge of the area, and he inspired his men. He didn't just spread fear, he earned respect. His subordinates followed him not only because they were scared of him, but because they saw him as a real leader. The way he changed from a street gang member to a crime strategist shows he had a smart mind that, in different situations, could have been used for very different achievements. His talent for building informant networks and sneaking into institutions and predicting what the police would do showed he was super smart. But that same loyalty that made him powerful also held the secret to his downfall. By fully joining with Escobar and the cartel's mission, Pinina lost the ability to step back and see the dangers. Instead of dialing back his involvement when the government put more pressure on, he pushed even harder, putting himself in more and more danger. Behind the feared man hid human passions. He loved football. He spent hours fixing motorcycles, and he enjoyed salsa music. These interests were his escape, his connection to a normal life he could never fully live. The difference between Pinina, who cheered in a stadium, and the one who ordered car bombs to explode shows the broken mind he needed to survive in the world he chose. By 1990, the net was closing in on Pinina. After years of killings, attacks, and an all-out war against the government, his name wasn't just about fear anymore. He had become a target for the whole country. Colonel Hugo Martinez, leading the search team, was determined to break down the Medellín cartel's military power. He knew that catching or getting rid of Pinina would be a huge blow to Escobar. By 1990, the net around Pinina started to close in. After years of killings, attacks, and an all-out war against the government, his name wasn't just about fear anymore. He had become a national target. Colonel Hugo Martinez, leading the search team, was determined to break down the Medellín cartel's military setup. He knew that catching or getting rid of Pinina would be a huge blow to Escobar. After many failed raids, the police were able to listen in on a call from a house that belonged to El Mugre, another one of the cartel's main guys. That clue told them that Pinina was planning to visit some family in Envigado. They quickly planned a mission to catch him, but just like many times before, Pinina's network of helpers jumped into action. As he was heading to the location, he received a warning call. "Hey, where are you?" the informant asked. "I'm just getting to the supermarket," Pinina replied. "Look, turn around and walk past the blue car near the restaurant on the corner. Those people are the police," they warned him. And, well, that warning was key to avoiding capture. Pinina understood the danger. In a matter of minutes, he started making frantic calls. He managed to gather about 60 men armed with rifles, ready to respond. Over the radio, one of his informants sent a message directly to General Martinez himself. "They're setting up an ambush against you. Change your location." The police changed their position, but soon they heard another alert. "They're on the corner above. Let's get them." Because they were clearly outnumbered, the general told them to pull back. This happened many times. Every time the search team got close to Pinina, when they arrived at the exact spot, he had already disappeared. He seemed to have a special sense for danger, but really it was a group of snitches who had gotten into every part of the police force. The chase turned into a personal fight between Pinina and Colonel Martinez, and the hitman didn't hesitate to fight back. In the middle of feeling really desperate, when everything seems lost and being unsure weighs heavily on every choice you make, sometimes a tiny spark of hope appears. It's in those moments when things seem impossible to handle that we find the strength to keep going. Even if the darkness feels like it will never end, there's always a chance for a fresh start, an unexpected opportunity that can change everything. And it's exactly that hope, no matter how small, that pushes us not to give up and to look for solutions, even in the toughest times. More than once he tried to kill the general. He sent an undercover police officer to the school where Martinez's children studied, but the attempt failed. He even tried to poison the officer's food. With no success, paranoia began to consume the general. During a routine operation, just 2 minutes after it began, Pinina was already warning other cartel members about the police movements. Outraged, Martinez confronted Major Aguilar. "You're the infiltrator. Find out who it is." Overwhelmed, the colonel traveled to Bogotá and submitted his resignation. Soon after, Aguilar contacted him. They had finally found the informant who was leaking every move of the search team. Colonel Hugo Martinez went back to the chase, but after so many failures, hope was fading. Catching Pinina seemed impossible. He was like a true ghost who always got away. Only a miracle could change things. That miracle came in the most surprising way. Pinina's housekeeper, without him knowing, was talking on the phone with her boyfriend. The detail went unnoticed by the hitman, but not by the authorities. On June 13, 1990, the search block found the boyfriend. He was a young, low-ranking police officer. He decided to cooperate and revealed that he used to pick up his partner in an area of the El Poblado neighborhood. With that information, an operation was set up where several units were spread out in key locations. A day later, on June 14th, agents saw a car that drove around several times before parking in front of a building. The behavior raised suspicions. Minutes later, they confirmed what they had been waiting for. Pinina was using the phone in a third-floor apartment. The operation began immediately. Special forces surrounded several blocks and stormed the building. When they tried to open the apartment door, they found it was reinforced. Pinina, always careful, had armored it. Inside, with his wife, newborn son, and maid, he found himself trapped for the first time. True to his ways, he grabbed a submachine gun, crossed himself, calling on the Virgin Mary as his mother had taught him, and ran to the balcony. His plan was to climb down to reach his car, but the agents spotted him from below. Pinina opened fire, and the police returned fire. In the middle of the shootout, he fell from the third floor, hitting the pavement hard. Still injured, he tried to get up to go back into the building, but another burst of gunfire hit him. John Jairo Arias Tascón, also known as Pinina, died at the age of 29 in a pool of blood riddled with bullets. That's the official story. But in the streets of Medellín, another story went around. According to this version, Pinina didn't die in the shootout, but was captured alive and taken to a barracks in the town of Bello. There he was supposedly tortured in a way known as the submarine. His head was dunked again and again into containers of water until he almost drowned, before being allowed to breathe, and the process was repeated. Despite the interrogations, he didn't reveal Escobar's location, not because he refused, but because he truly didn't know it. The only thing they got were documents confirming that the boss had left Medellín and was possibly hiding in the Middle Magdalena region. Escobar reacted with rage. In a statement, he claimed that Pinina had been executed in front of his wife and young son. Meanwhile, the authorities and the cartel's enemies celebrated the fall of the monster of Lovena, one of Colombia's most feared men. On the night of June 14, 1990, around 11 o'clock, fingerprint tests were done to confirm what was already suspected. The body belonged to John Jairo Arias Tascón. Pinina had fallen. His wife was taken into custody by a criminal investigation judge, and their son, just a baby, was given to family welfare. But his death didn't bring calm, quite the opposite. It became the trigger for a new wave of violence. A few hours later, a car bomb exploded in Medellín, followed by other massacres that shook the city. It was the bloody farewell of Escobar's most loyal lieutenant. Days later, a disturbing photograph reached the boss. In it, Pinina was seen wounded, escorted by agents taking him to an official vehicle. For Escobar, that image was proof that his hitman had been captured alive and executed by the authorities. His reaction was immediate. "The criminal and murderous police play without honor," he declared angrily, remembering his trusted man. Pinina's death was not a small event. It was one of the most devastating blows to the Medellín cartel. General Miguel Maza Marquez, one of Escobar's main enemies, even stated that Pinina's fall was, in strategic terms, like the death of the boss himself. Beyond the terror he inspired, the story of John Jairo Arias Tascón reflects a Colombia broken by inequality, where poverty and lack of opportunities pushed thousands of young people towards violence. Pinina wasn't born a monster. He was shaped by a harsh environment, by extreme circumstances, and by decisions that led him to crime. His blind loyalty to Pablo Escobar, which began with a robbery and ended with a bloody death, shows how complex human relationships can be, even in the darkest situations. In a criminal world where betrayal was the norm, Pinina was the exception. He stayed loyal until the end, giving his life for a devotion that completely consumed him. After his death, the Medellín cartel continued its war against the state, but it had lost its most brilliant military strategist. The organization became a 1,000-headed monster with many bosses, including Giovanni Lopera, the model, El Chopo, Tyson, and El Arete, who kept the terror alive. However, no one inherited the deadly mix of intelligence, coldness, and loyalty that defined Pinina. When he died, he left behind a fortune built in just a decade of service to the cartel. Properties in Medellín and Antioquia, as well as millions in bank accounts managed by frontmen. He was buried in the central cemetery of Envigado next to his mother, Ana Lidia Tascón Rios. The story of John Jairo Arias Tascón is more than just the life story of a hitman. It's a picture of a broken country where poverty, lack of chances, and a violent environment pushed a whole generation down paths of no return. Pinina reminds us that behind every criminal, there's a human story marked by choices that at the time seemed unavoidable. His legacy is a warning. Loyalty, when directed towards wrong goals, can turn into the most destructive of forces, destroying not only the person who shows it, but also the society around them. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Pinina's life, a tale of extreme loyalties, relentless violence, and human contradictions. Now we want to know what you think. Was Pinina a monster created by circumstances, or a man who chose the path of violence? Do you think his loyalty was his greatest strength or his worst mistake? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get more documentaries about the figures who shaped history. Until the next amazing story.